Hi, I'm Donna Wilder.
And I'm Janie Donaldson. Welcome to Quilt Central. We have a wonderful show planned for you today.
Our first guest has a card trick up her sleeve, while our long-arm expert gives you permission to free up your feathers.
Then we'll take a stroll to Lower Town to meet another local artist. We'll finish with a fun project that displays your vacation photos.
Stay tuned.
Quilt Central is made possible in part by Janome America, makers of sewing machines and sergers. Janome, because you simply love to sew.
APQS offers the Millennium and a full line of hand-guided quilting machines made in America's heartland for America's artisans.
Sylvia Design Sewing Furniture, designed just for you. JT Trading Corporation, stick with us. Electric Quilt Company. Paducah McCracken County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Additional funding was provided by these companies that care about quilting. Welcome to Quilt Central, celebrating quilting in everyday living, with your hosts, Jane Donaldson and Donna Wilder.
One of those blocks that I've always been intrigued with is called the card trick, and my guest today is going to tell us how to put that block together. Joining me is the sewing expert, Maddie Bushman. Hi, Maddie.
Hi, Donna. So nice to be here. I do want to explain that there's a reason why they call it card trick.
Because it's tricky to do?
Yes, and a lot of the publications that have explained the card trick have explained it to you, and it'll say the dimension for one of the triangles should be 2 7/8, and then 3 1/8. And I learned the hard way that those dimensions are not compatible. It's a very long story, but the person that really helped me to demystify this was my husband, because he heard some language and he came downstairs and wondered what was going on. And he looked at it and he said, "It'll never work." And I was, perplexed at that. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because you have to use wholes and halves in order for it to go together properly." So I tried it, and you know what? Every single time I do it, now it works. I've taught it all over the country, and people absolutely love this, and they find it so easy to do.
Let's look at the project that you brought. This is a tote bag?
Exactly. I call this a supply tote bag. It's a nice little tote bag for when you take some quilt classes to carry your little notions in.
Good.
Yeah, and it's real easy to do, and I'm going to show you exactly how you put it together. We also have another example. I just brought some different color contrasts, to show off that no matter what colors you want to use, it still looks great.
It does. It's really a neat block, and I always like the way they're sort of interlocking together. It's a great block to work with.
It is. So let's go back to square one.
Okay.
We
Those
need
squares.
There you go. Now these are some templates that I have. The 3 1/2-inch square, you want to cut one from each color.
Okay.
Okay. Then the 3-inch square, you want to cut 2 from each color.
Okay.
4-inch square, we're going to need to cut this into 4.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'll give you the ruler.
Thank you. This
Remove
this
these.
ruler's just a little bit big, but doesn't matter. And you cut this into 4. Now, you would use a mat that has a grid, okay? And that would make it a lot easier for you, because you want to make sure accuracy is essential.
Yes.
Error, you must. All right, and just to show you, we can start to put some of the pieces. Oh, I want to mention that there's another part to this trick. Okay.
I'm listening.
I'm telling you, this is very important. You must have a diagram to work from.
So you've laid out this diagram, and now you're filling in the blocks
Right.
on top of what we did. Okay.
Right, just for demonstration
Yep.
purposes, I'm filling in the blocks on the top. But what I would actually do is, I would go ahead and set this up. And you want to make sure that you follow the diagram. It's very easy to get confused. And one of the most difficult ones to do is the center one.
Okay.
Okay, because you're putting 4 pieces together.
And you want to be sure that they join together perfectly.
Exactly. So, like I said, we would go ahead and cut this into 4s. Those in half. When I said white ones, I mean the 3-inch squares.
Right.
You only need to cut those in half. Okay? So what we can do is we can see from over here, let's see, we're going to give this one more little cut. Okay?
Just not going through there.
No, we can set that aside. Now these you can see are 2 large squares. Large triangles. So we're going to cut this in half. Okay, because what I'd like to do is show you a little bit of how easily they go together. Okay?
All right.
So we have those. Now we've already cut the red ones. Here, and this would go here. And so we want to go ahead and sew these together.
Okay.
And that means right sides together. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and change to our 1/4-inch foot, our quilting foot. You know, we always have to use that 1/4-inch foot when we're quilting.
And I think it's so essential because, as you said earlier, precision is so important with this one.
Yes, this one is, there's no forgiving. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to go ahead, again, adjust our stitch length. We want to adjust that to 1.8 because that's usually what most quilters like to use. Now, on occasion, if I'm trying some new quilt block, what I will do is I'll only go down to 2.0.
Okay.
And I wonder if you can guess why.
Because
if you have to pull them out, 2.0 is a lot easier.
That's right. Okay.
Already knew that. Unlike myself. So we're using our 1/4-inch foot, and of course we're getting a perfect 1/4-inch seam allowance. And when we're done, take it out, cut our threads, and then we'll cut our beginning threads. Now for now, we're just going to finger press this open, and you know that most of the time you finger press to the dark side.
Right.
Okay? And you can see how it's already starting to take shape. You would press this with the iron and then clip off the little points. Okay? Now, then once you've got this one done, we'll set this here, then you would continue on and you would sew these 2 halves together. Once you've sewn those 2 halves together, then you would sew them to the whole one. All the the pieces together to form the squares. Do that first, then sew the squares together.
Okay.
Until you've made a row, and then you would sew the row 1 to row 2. Like I said, in review, this one is very difficult. You have to take your time. Another tip to remember is that once you've completed your square, you want to go and measure it and true up the sides.
Okay.
Okay? And then you want to make sure that every single square, when you've completed it, is exactly the same dimension. These are some important things to remember when you're doing the card trick in order for it to go together easily and get that nice professional look in the end.
Well, you've got some good ideas, some good tips, and a great way to use that block. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and keep up the good work with all of your quilting.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to introduce to you today a friend of mine from Texas, Kathy Olson. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Janie.
Kathy has a famous saying. She always says, if it's not moving, feather it. But you're not talking about birds, are you?
No, we're talking about quilted feathers here, the traditionally styled ones that you can do free-handed.
They're beautiful. What have you brought us today?
I've brought you 2 quilts hanging in the back. Glenda Stevens' Blue Star Millennium quilt, which we use the stars themselves to space out the feather design so that they're even.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Isn't it pretty? And the country-styled quilt by DeAndrea Crow has different areas on it that are feathered, and in the very center of the quilt you can see where the shape of the spine has been used against the block to offset it.
So you did all those designs and they're original?
and free-handed.
You know, we'd like to know how some of those are done. You have another one here that is on a sampler.
Yes, these samples show how you can place your spine in various areas of a block so that each of the blocks appear unique but still all have feathers in them and still, again, all free-handed.
Oh, they're just beautiful. We'd like to learn how you do that.
Oh, I'd love to show you.
This is beautiful, even on the back. It's just gorgeous.
For this card trick, we've just placed a spot of chalk like this midway in each of the seams so we know where we want our spine to hit.
So you would do the spine first.
Yes, we do, and we're going to put a feather on the end of it. See, we're hitting each of the chalk marks, then we're drooping a feather down, and we're going to feather back. And when you're having a perfect day, each of the feathers nestles up right next to the other one.
So you like to go one direction down the spine and you'll follow back over the spine more than once.
You go up the spine, feather back, go up the spine a second time, and then feather back and come back to where you started. We'll just move this out of the way. We've already pre-marked our little dots here to give us just a visual guide. But we're doing all this, as you can see, completely free-handed.
That is beautiful, and it's nice that you do the spine first because that kind of stabilizes where you're going so your fabrics don't shift while you're quilting the feather part in.
Exactly. It also provides that visual guide so that you know exactly where your feathers need to go each and every time.
Now the feather doesn't actually have to meet the spine every time, does it?
No, it doesn't, but we like to get it as close as possible because the idea is to have these appear just like the traditional feathers that you would mark with like a stencil or a pattern product.
Okay, and then when you're shaping the feather, how do you know exactly how to curve that?
Well, on the one side, we like to call it a half a heart, or the side of a light bulb. But on the other side, we prefer to refer to it as a question mark because it's exactly the same shape, just without the dot at the bottom.
So the feathers flow out from the spine.
Out from the spine. On this sashing, with just this one dot, which is in the very center of it, we're just going to go curve up and to the left and feather back to the center. Just make that end feather, and it only takes just a little bit of practice to get your feathers to look the same almost each and every time. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Now we're going to go down and to the right, and we're going to feather back, and if we're very lucky today, we'll have exactly the same amount of feathers on both sides. And now just because I need that space there, or I have too much space there, I'm going to put in just that.
Just a figure 8, and that just kind of fills it right in. Your feathers have so much motion to them. Is it because the heart shape kind of lays over on its back?
I think so, and the fact that this is the shape that we're used to seeing in antique quilts, and so it's very pleasing to the eye.
Well, that's absolutely beautiful. Can you do just one more little spot?
Yes, I can. Here we're going to go up into this shape, make some long-tailed inside feathers, make a half a flower shape as a companion design, right back into the other green triangle. We can use these freehand feathers to fill in almost any shape in our quilt block. Then make an end, 2 feathers, straight out to make the spray. Fill in the bottom of the block. Up. 2 feathers on the other side. Another spray out. Straight down. And there you go.
That is something to make our ancestors jealous because we can do it so fast these days.
It's wonderful. I just love doing feathers.
Well, thank you for showing us your technique.
Thank you for inviting me.
Often, we see the same kind of patterns in leather, so we think you'll enjoy this next segment.
Basic need of man. Did the art evolve because we wanted to make it pretty. But of the half dozen basic crafts, leather was one of the most important because it did provide food, clothing, and shelter.
In this 1895 home located in the lower town section of Paducah, Kentucky, you'll find one of the few craftspersons that are as pure in their technique and skill as Phil Phillips and his staff at Dixie Leather Works.
The thing about doing leather work, it's the smell, it's the touch, it's the intrinsic value that it has because it's an organic thing that you cannot duplicate. And once it's in your blood, you just can't get rid of it. It's just a wonderful thing. Man cannot reproduce this thing. And in doing what we do here, it is so very special. There's very few people that actually do it. We tried to focus in two different areas, basically. In the historic end, we actually produce in a historic timeline from 1832 to 1876 museum historic reproductions that's used in the movie and television props industry, living history parks, museums, and also in the reenacting community. We've done a whole series of movies in the last 15 years. This summer we worked on 5 movies. In 1991, when my wife and I bought 306 North 7th Street here in historic Lowertown, we had no idea what was going to happen with the Artist Relocation Program. This is the historic Wallerstein home. It was built in 1895. And as in the last 2 years, the evolution of the Artist Relocation Program has progressed, we're right in the middle of it. In the 5 square block area here, we're just ironically right in the middle of it and have been a key player in regards to everything involved with the relocation program because of the unique aspect of what we do here. With the 3 primary craftsmen that we do have here in the leather shop, between all 3 of us, we have about 70 years of experience. All starting out in the late 60s and early 70s where we were taking tracings of your foot and making handmade sandals that fit you just perfectly. As the evolution not only of leather working itself, but ourselves as craftsmen, our work has done nothing but gotten better. And I think with the talents that we have here, even though unfortunately there's not a school that you can go to and learn what we do. And that's something that we hope to resolve, and I think the Artist Relocation Program could possibly be an answer to that.
Guest is going to share with us. We're going to show you how to scrapbook in fabric. Joining me is Jennifer O'Brien. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Donna. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
I understand you went on a vacation and you saw some wonderful sights and took lots of pictures and you wanted a way to show how you used them.
That's right, I did. I developed this photo transfer quilt, which is great for vacations, and I call it my vacation photo quilt.
Now, where did you get the inspiration to start this whole design?
I kind of had an idea before I went that I wanted to do a memory quilt for when I came back. And I took photos straight on from buildings, and this one here that I brought is a photo that I took that I'm using in the quilt today.
Oh, it's
Holland.
Yes, and that I was going to ask you where it came from. Now you
overhead, you can use a copying machine, but you want to get it to the size that you up.
That's true. And so the windows, you know, I see how you've used the tulips in Holland. There's no doubt that that was the Holland part of it as well.
Great. So what I did was I just took this and then I traced it. And I traced the outline of the building to place adhere this to my quilt in a way that I wouldn't have to use pins and worry about not having a flat surface. So I used a repositionable spray adhesive that works great on paper, and you just spray it lightly. You have a light tack, and it just holds everything in place so when you sew around it.
And you did that with the pattern before you cut out the design.
Exactly.
And that's great because then you don't have to worry about pins or doing anything. That would be nice when you're making clothing as well.
Yes, it's wonderful.
The next step is to then do what?
Well, the next thing you could do is you could, if you have your backing all set, is to put this in place. So you just do the same thing, only use your fabric-friendly spray, and you just do a light spray on that, and then you would stick that also in place so that it doesn't move while you're working on the rest of it. Now you're ready to decide what photos you want to transfer. And the way you do that is you pick a fabric with a fine grain so that it comes out nice and sharp. And you need to make sure that, because this is going to go on your printer and your printer ink isn't permanent, you need to soak that will make the ink permanent when it goes through your printer.
I wondered how they did that.
Yes, exactly. So we use that to go, and you soak it for 5 minutes, then you iron it because it'll come out. Use your copy paper, because some people say to use freezer paper, but I find the printers don't like freezer paper. They like their printer paper, their copy paper.
Good, and we don't want to make them unhappy.
Exactly. So again, you use your repositionable because it comes off nice and easy. You just make a very light spray.
And I suppose you have to really get it on the edges too.
Exactly. The leading edge through your printer is really important. So I make sure the top and the bottom, because I flip them around sometimes, so I use the most that I can of the fabric. So then you just stick that right down there. It holds nice and even, and then you just rotary cut
all the way around,
so you have a nice even edge on your paper. And now this is ready to go through your printer. So you scan your photos, and then you do have to know a little bit about the printer so you can adjust the photos to fit in the windows. If they're a little big, it doesn't matter. You can crop them. You just don't want them too small.
That's right.
Okay, and so after it goes through, and I cut this so that I could get 4 out of my piece, so only half the paper went through, but you get a very nice, pretty picture for your
little windows that are going to showcase them.
Exactly, and see, it's just about the same size. So we're just going to cut right along the edge, and you leave a little bit of white because you're going to sew this down with some type of zigzag or blanket stitch. So it really doesn't matter if you leave just a little bit, but if you leave a little bit, you want to leave the same amount all the way along the photo.
And that way, when you zigzag, you're not taking away any of your photo, which is nice.
Yes, exactly.
This is the part I always find is a challenge, is getting that open. You did a good job.
And so you just do a very light spray. I'm just going to use this.
And this is the one, oops. There we go. Blow that away. It's so light. I'll hold it.
There we go.
And see, that's the one for fabric?
Right, it's our fabric, so it's very easy to work with. And when you wash it, the bond will release, and it's easy to stick. And what I do is I just line it right up with the bottom of this window, and you'll do the exact same thing all the way down. I'll pull it back so you know you've got it right where you want it to be, and that's why I cut out the windows beforehand.
That's a good idea, because then you know exactly where they're placed. Now, all that lovely trim that you did around each one of the photos and the door and all the other parts.
Yes, and you've marked that on your pattern.
Right.
So that you can then cut them out.
And look at that once more on the pattern, all those pieces.
And see all these match with this and the door and the outside parts of the door. And I sprayed these with our repositionable spray ahead of time, so when I work with it, I know that it's going to be very easy to work with. And so we've got this, I've put it on, this is the paper on the top. I've cut out the fabric, and then you just use your fabric spray again, right around the edge. And when you're ready to place it down, you just then again, by this time, hopefully you have all your windows down and you can take this whole thing off.
Place it down, and then you finish by stitching through it all, and it's done.
Exactly. You layer it, and you can stitch it through all your quilting at the same time.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us, Jennifer.
You're
It's
welcome.
a great idea.
Thank you.
Wasn't that a great way to display photos?
I have a couple of trips that I could certainly use that technique for. I hope you've enjoyed our program today. Next time, we're going to be featuring red work on the long arm quilting machine, penny-size patterns, and Cindy's attic window.
Join us next time on Quilt Central.
Visit the Quilt Central website at www.quiltcentraltv.com for more information on this program. Quilt Central is made possible in part by Janome America, makers of sewing machines and sergers. Janome, because you simply love to sew.
APQS offers the Millennium and a full line of hand-guided quilting machines made in America's heartland for America's artisans.
Sylvia Design Sewing Furniture, designed just for you. JT Trading Corporation, stick with us. Electric Quilt Company. Paducah McCracken County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Additional funding was provided by these companies that care about quilting. Celebrate quilting in your everyday living. To purchase videotapes of this or any episode of Quilt Central, you may call toll-free at 1-866-PADUCAH.